everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Mina Brower, who is the attorney and author. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you
Pleasure
so
to have
much for the opportunity and for the platform.
Oh, I mean, the pleasure is ours, and just to kind of constantly having individuals like yourself coming on, it just goes to show that there are a lot of great thought leaders just like yourself out there that have amazing stories, and the fact that you have taken the time to just be present with us and our guests and our listeners, I feel it's a blessing. So I'm honored to have you on. Want to hear about this book, right? And what you got going on with this book.
Yes.
But before we actually dive into the book and talk about how you got there, because that's a big switch up. We're going to talk about that switch up as well.
Yes.
Just give us a little bit of an understanding of your cultural background and where you grew up.
Thank you. So I was born in Mexico City, in the 90s. And I
Okay, shout out
immigrated
to
to
the
the
90s.
Yeah, 90s kids. I immigrated to the United States with my parents when I was a child. And we were in search of the American dream, like a lot of other immigrant families, trying to start fresh, start anew, find new opportunities. And I think my story is not really unique. I think my story is like many other people. It doesn't matter if you come from Mexico or if you come from, Nigeria, if you come from India. I think that it's very similar that we come to this country and we're trying to learn English, and we're told by our parents that we have to study very hard. And it's a
True.
lot of pressure that a lot of people that are born here with no immigrant background, they don't really understand because the stakes are higher. The risk is certainly higher as well, because if you fail, not only do you disappoint your parents, but you disappoint everybody else back home that saw you move away. So
That is
it
true.
was very difficult to, be learning the language and also to be assimilating myself into this new culture with people that, didn't look like me. And it was a very humbling experience. And I think because I was an immigrant child, I learned advocacy at a very young age.
Hmm.
So it's not it's everybody knows that immigrants, when they're children, you pick up English or any language very quickly. So I was learning English very fast, faster than my parents, and my parents would have me help them with like translating documents, or they would take me to the grocery store and I would help them, point out what different types of food we needed. So that's where I learned advocacy at a very young age. And I also loved reading. So reading helped me learn English. And I think the mixture of both, of being an advocate for my own family and also reading a lot, sort of began this sort of duality, this journey that I had with eventually, I became a lawyer and then I became an author. So I feel like both of these paths have always been so closely aligned. And certainly I wouldn't be here if I wasn't an immigrant and the experiences that I had.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to break that down right there. Now I can see how the transition started off. Really can.
Yes.
By advocating, learning how to advocate at a very young age, and then the reading definitely leads into one of the first places that you visited. But before we actually get a little bit more into that step right there, did you have any siblings on the on? And you mentioned about the whole um, transition from Mexico City to the United States. English. You mentioned about speaking English, learning how to speak English. Obviously, you were learning at a faster pace than your parents, but I could only imagine just with that amount of pressure going to school, where obviously majority of the people are definitely not speaking English. How'd you um, navigate through that?
So I do have a my sibling was a baby when she came here. And I remember learning English in ESL classes. So I was in ESL classes with, I think maybe five other students that were like freshly immigrated to the United States. And we learned everything in that class. We learned what Thanksgiving was. We learned a lot of different holidays that we celebrate in the United States. That was really kind of like my coming to America refresher course that I had with my teacher, Mrs. Schwartz.
Okay, shout
I'll never
shout
forget
to
her
another
name. Her
teacher.
name was Mrs. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and she was lovely. She taught me how she taught me the warmth that all immigrants should feel when they arrive to a new country. She was so respectful and kind, and I think because of my experience with her, I learned English much quicker because I wasn't bullied or intimidated for my English. She really made it into a very warm environment where I was able to thrive.
And was Miss Schwartz an immigrant as well?
No, I believe she was just American.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's seeing it's always good to hear stories like that, because I know sometimes in previous journeys of people that I've connected with on the Zaka platform, the podcast, they had mentioned about like trying to find someone that could help them, that looked like them and spoke like them.
Yeah. So Mrs. Schwartz, she was American. So she definitely showed me, what it's like to be very open and welcoming towards immigrants. And she was one of the people that really showed me what it's like to be part of a society where everyone is welcome.
Mm, mm. It's good to know that there are individuals like that out there in this world. You know, a lot of the individuals that have come on this platform had expressed that they were looking for someone that looked like them, that spoke the same language, right? It's hard to kind of like think that outside of the box, that the person that might help them has nothing to do with where you come from, right? So to have
Yeah.
someone like a
We
Mr.
moved,
Schwartz helping, that's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, we moved to a neighborhood that was all Caucasian, like nobody spoke English. So it
English.
was hard because nobody looked like us and nobody, had our same traditions or anything. Like I didn't even have a quinceañera, which is like
Oh
the when you
wow.
turn 15 in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hispanic culture. I didn't have one. I didn't have one because none of the people around me were
You understand.
Hispanic. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it was a very sort of crash course, of
Wow.
assimilation.
Yeah, now growing up in the Bronx, I'm from the Bronx, right? My parents are Caribbean background, and I remember being in the Bronx having to be a part of 10 different quinceañeras, and I used to be like, wow, this I was a part of the court. If you, I had to learn to dance and everything. There's a lot
Yep.
going on.
Oh, it's
Shout out to it.
it's a lot,
Uh,
and it's very expensive.
yes.
So,
What so when you're talking about that, when we're talking about your culture, like obviously you can see that. What does the Mexican heritage mean to you?
oh, family unity and tradition. Family is so important to us, and it's even like for the Caribbean, your own background, it's like we're just warm, like it's like we have just this like warmth in our blood that we just always come together with family. We're always making family a priority, and I think that's why, when we immigrated here, we all had a part to play. I was a child, but I knew that I had a part to play in our family in terms of translating and helping my parents with like our rental lease documents and all of these
Oh
things.
yeah.
Like it wasn't an obligation. It was a sort of a warmth, a family sort of closeness that we share as Mexicans. And certainly, my mom did what she could to make sure that we observed, Mexican holidays and to make sure that we spoke Spanish at home so that we wouldn't forget it. So I'm really happy that my mom kept our traditions alive and the language at home alive because it felt like even though we were in a different country, it certainly felt like we were staying true to our roots. We were staying true to our culture. We were able to celebrate holidays we were able to celebrate different, days of observance in Mexico. And
Good.
even things like, the Day of the Dead, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
celebrated in my home, with my Irish husband. Um, and I'm able to pass these traditions down to my child and to make sure that she is proud of being part Mexican and continues to learn about our culture. So I think for any immigrant parent, to make sure that your kids continue to be exposed to their mother culture is so important. And I'm so glad that my mom did that for us.
That's amazing. Because, at times, it is America, right? A lot of people feel like they have to get acclimated in by giving up certain things. And such as their culture is probably one of the first ones. Their language that they learn first, is like, we got to throw that out. Or we got to put it to the side. And then at that point, they just don't appreciate it. So it's always good to hear how um, a lot of the thought leaders that have come on, how their grandparents and their parents are like, no, you are still going to eat this type of food. You're still going to speak this language to your grandparents when you come home. You're still going to have to abide by the same traditions in regards to our culture and our heritage. So knowing that you're in an affluent white area where you're like, you know what, I don't even know where I could do this kind of stuff, but to still do it within the house is still good, right? It might have not been in the open at
Yeah.
various establishments, but you're like, you know what, we're gonna celebrate it in our own way in our house. So I get it when you said the whole thing about family, but it definitely reads that way. When you came to United States, like what do you feel like? I know obviously your mom and obviously your sibling was pretty young, but what was something that was going through your head that made you say like this is the biggest challenge I'm gonna have to go through?
So when we immigrated here, we came here in like the middle of the school year, like the second semester, and everyone had formed friends. Everyone, had the little friends groups, and we were all in, I was in grade school. So it's hard for any child to navigate grade school to begin with and throw in not knowing the language. Um, it was hard, and people were nice to me, but it was definitely intimidating for me to th make sure that people understood me when I spoke. And I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be friends with people because I had just left my friends in Mexico, and
Yeah.
I wanted to, to form friends in the United States. So even though, my ESL teacher and the students in our ESL class, um, it was such a welcome environment in that space, leaving that and going to like homeroom or like to all of these other classes was definitely very intimidating. And I think I definitely academically applied myself to really master the language and to really try to, be in extracurricular activities so I could make friends with people. Um, so that was one of the hardest things because I couldn't tell my mom, I couldn't tell my dad like, "Oh, I don't really have a lot of friends." They would just, because that would be for them so sad. So I had to keep all of that to myself and just kind of navigate that on my own. Um, so yeah, I hadn't thought of that until you asked. But
It,
yeah,
and people might say, is it the language? Is it the community? But let's just talk about basic needs,
yeah,
friendship,
yeah,
connection, right?
yeah,
Just making authentic connections to people that don't speak like you, that don't look like you, and may not even understand you when you're speaking to them, right?
yeah,
So obviously your parents can't fight your battles for you every time, right? This is something
right.
you got to kind of navigate on your own. So to have the pressure already from just being an immigrant to then trying to then navigate how could I, you know, fit in, right? And not knowing, is this the right way? Is this the wrong way? Do I switch up my hairstyle? Do I stop talking with my accent? Do I speak to them in Spanish? There's so many questions that go through your head, prior to you finding you. And at a young age, kids are just trying to find themselves. Even as adults, people are still trying to find themselves, right?
Oh,
I,
absolutely.
I could only imagine the amount of hats you probably had to wear to fit into the various different groups that were in school and
Yeah.
still be able to come home level headed and be like, whew, That was a lot. That
For me,
was
yeah, and I think it's so I really appreciate you saying that because I think I was so determined to master the language and I was so determined, to fit in that I think and then the pressures of being an immigrant and really, being the best and you have to be number one and there's no number two and you can't get a B, you have to get an A and a C is not good. I had my father, because Harry Potter was very famous at that time. I remember coming home with a D in math, and I was in grade school, and I was in my room reading Harry Potter, and my father, he walked in my room and he took my Harry Potter book out of my hands and he ripped it in half. And he said to
wow.
me, that my grades weren't good enough, that I had to try harder. And like, this is not a unique story. This happens to kids all of the time, especially if you're, from an immigrant background, that you're expected to excel. So not only are you navigating, school on your own, but you're also coming home to an environment that is, you can never stop trying to be perfect. You can never stop trying to, you know, be better than they were the last day. So it's very challenging.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
The I don't. Wow. But first off, thank you for sharing that story. Right. Um, it's something that still lives with you, right? And it's obviously has shaped you
Right.
into the person that you are right now. And it's a story you could actually share with your child.
Yes.
Like this is something that mommy had to go through, right? I think that story, what I'm taking away from that is that, this is one of the struggles that, we face as first or second generation immigrants. Our parents sometimes didn't know the amount of stress that we had. To
Yeah.
them, they were saying, well, we made it here. That was hard. You just got to go to school, right? It's over their head. They're like, you just got to read a book. You just got to get
Mhm.
good grades. It shouldn't be that hard. I just found a way to get 8 of us over here
Right.
and pay the rent and work 3 jobs, not taking
And then
away.
yeah, and then you try to ask your parents for help on homework, but they don't know the language.
Yeah,
So, it's like I see so many, people online, they're clearly like immigrant creators and they have funny memes where like you have a child that's crying, trying to learn for homework, and then the mom just repeats the question without explaining
you're
because they
like, what?
don't know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And I think and this is where I look back at it now and having this conversation with you. I was looking at my parents like, you just don't even know how hard it is. But they were looking at me and saying, you don't even know how hard this is.
right.
So I think it was a moment in time for all of us, and still currently to this day, there is definitely a disconnect between the parents and the child in understanding that both individuals are struggling. It's
Yes.
not just one. And when they start to realize that they both need to lean into each other to help each other out during those hardships, that's when you start to see that success. But that sometimes doesn't happen until the kid, becomes a lot better in school and knows how to navigate on their own. But it doesn't mean that they didn't go through the struggle, get the bullying, pointing the fingers, the
Yeah.
laughing at, in order to get there. And the same thing with the parents saying, well, I got a promotion now. So it's like they're both they're both running parallel, but not working together at times. So I can only imagine, and you being the older sister at the end of
Yeah.
the day, right? You got a lot on your shoulder too. That you got to set the example.
Oh, and it's for everybody else that came to this country after us, or people that were born here, like like first generation cousins and whatever that were born in the United States. It's like always, I was the oldest one, so it's always, well, you have to do what she's doing, and look at how well she's doing in class, and she's an honor roll, and she's, she's doing this and she's doing that, and I was put on this pedestal, which is not unfair to any child, especially then an immigrant child, because everything we've just talked about, it's just, yeah. So you're put on this pedestal that you can never fall, you can never fail. Um, and I think that's why all immigrant children or first generation immigrant children, we're so strong. We're so incredibly strong, and we have so much to offer to this country, because we've been through it, and excellence is expected at all times.
Mhm. You don't even know what's happening, but the amount of growth that's happening at that short period of time. And we
Yeah.
can look back at it now as adults and say,
Yes.
yes, it was very hard, but it definitely, like you said, it got us to where we are today.
Yes.
Um, one of the next questions I want to kind of bring up to you, like, did you ever feel like you had to prove yourself at any point in time during this journey?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I feel like I have to prove myself to myself every day, you know? And I think that's just kind of like going back to childhood, that mentality, that we I'm human, I can make mistakes, but they don't feel good.
Yeah,
And I know that I can do better. And it's definitely a careful balance of knowing that I can say I did my best, but also could I have done more than my best? Could I have done like a little bit more?
yeah.
So it's yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, you did mention to me a little bit earlier about how reading and advocating was like something that you loved doing at a young age. Could you express or kind of just navigate for us a little bit more about what inspired you to pursue a career in law, and like how did that even start? And you obviously become a partner in the firm. That's like on its highest level. So how did
Yeah.
we get there?
So, I would say my number one love was always writing and reading. My parents didn't think that I would ever make money as a writer. And I remember I would enter writing contests when I was in grade school, and I eventually won my school's like writing award, and I got a little trophy. And I remember coming home, and I told my parents, I'm like, look, like yeah, I was like 14. I was like, "Look, I got this award and whatever." And my parents kind of like were like, "Okay, yeah, like
Good job.
that's not a real career. Go back, like, go study." So, my parents were very much like, "That's not something that you could ever pursue. You need to either be a doctor or you need to be a lawyer. Those are your only two options." I remember I wanted to maybe be a psychologist at one point, and then my father was like, "Well, you're not going to make any money as a psychologist. You should really go into law." So,
Now,
um,
we
and
should
he
this
had
where are you
yeah,
getting this information from? That's what we want to ask our parents.
right. So he actually, when he immigrated here, he was like halfway through his law school in Mexico.
Okay, all right. This is
So
some
yeah,
facts then. All right.
yeah.
I'm about to
So
say,
right, right. He was trying to like live out his dream. So I was like, okay, well, I love helping people. Advocacy is something that I've done from a very young age. So that was kind of the plan. And I remember being, learning about the LSAT and all of these exams when I was in high school, trying to get the best grades and
mm,
everything to get scholarships for, university and then for law school, which I did. I had excellent scholarships because I studied very, very hard. Um, and yeah, when I was, a law student, I think because I was so used to um, being very, at that point, putting myself out there with communication and just trying to be as friendly as possible and build connections. I actually became really good at networking when I was in university and then law school, that I was able to, from the age of 19, I started interning in law firms. So when, you have a lot of college students that they don't know what to do with the summer, they work like jobs here and jobs there. I was like, no, I'm on a path to become a lawyer. I'm going to start now as a freshman in university to get that legal experience. So my first summer at university, I interned at a law firm. And from there on, every single summer I worked at a law firm. And then eventually my networking led me to, working at the appellate court level and all of these incredible opportunities. Um,
mhm, mhm,
and it's been such an incredible journey to be able to be a lawyer. It's truly a blessing to be able to help people and to go to work every day knowing that I've made a difference in someone's life. I know it
mhm.
sounds very corny, but
No, 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 no.
it fills my cup and it
Yeah.
makes me very happy.
Keyword happy.
Yeah.
Keyword. So if you like picking up trash on the street, if you like knitting, sewing, if you like writing books, whatever makes you happy, this world is a very crazy place at
Right.
times. It's like you had mentioned to me previously, it's not as friendly as we would like it to be, right? So to find individuals that are very happy at what they do, the likelihood of them being friendly is probably at a very high number versus the
Right.
individuals unhappy they're probably not as friendly as a person is who is happy. So I commend you for finding something and moving in that direction. And shout out to your father. That's the number one salesman right there.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
He was selling a profession before you even knew it.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it didn't come without its hardships. Like I got shingles in university.
Oh,
Which is something that, people that are over 60 get.
yeah.
If you're younger than 60, you get shingles when you're stressed. I got shingles while I was a junior in college. And from the amount of stress that I was in, to try to, be a lawyer. But it's all worth it. I think it's all part of my journey of how I got here. And I think every single obstacle that I have faced has made me who I am today. And that's just the way I choose to look at it.
Okay. Okay. Now I know you specialize in appeals work, right?
Yes.
What drew you to the area and what drew you to that part of law, that area of law? Um,
So I love finding loopholes. I
I know who to hire now.
I love looking at a section and, a legal section and just saying, "Oh, but we could ask for this because this applies." And I love, it's all persuasive writing because you're trying to convince the decision makers to overturn something or to grant you an exception. And it's a lot of fun. It's not litigation because I don't have the heart for that, but appeals work is very, very fun.
Did you use any of this appeals work when you were growing up?
Well, I did intern when I was a student at the appellate level. Um,
Okay. Just
but
making sure you use it at home with the
Oh,
family.
at home. Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like as the eldest daughter, when you're so, especially being a woman, if you're so like under very strict, a very strict environment, you have to really persuasively move throughout different rules that
Mm,
you have to follow. So,
I'm hoping your child has not caught on to this yet.
oh no, no, she's probably going to be a lawyer because she argues all day. That's all she does.
Oh, wow. Well, we got to make sure she doesn't hear this episode, okay? Because
Right.
she'll be like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do now. Oh, wow, wow, wow. You dedicate time to mentoring young
Yes.
female attorneys, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you also do it for pro bono, which is amazing. Talk to us a little bit more about that. Like, how is that a part of the schedule? How do you fit this in?
So I started mentoring when I first became a lawyer, when I was licensed. I saw the opportunities that I had, going back to when I was in undergrad, when I was 19. And a lot of people weren't doing what I was doing. People didn't start interning in law firms until they got to law school.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would do odd things like get coffee for people or, like print things out and prepare, trial documents and all of that. But I was in that environment and it was excellent. And what I noticed was that my colleagues who were much older than me because they were law students, they were typically all men. And I didn't really see a lot of other female law clerks or clerks with me. And I knew that it was because of the lack of, connections and the lack of networking and all of that. So when I became licensed, I went back to my undergraduate school and I started a program for undergraduate women that wanted to pursue a career in law later on to get them like a foot in the door as they were undergraduate students like I did. So that's where the program started. And I've mentored some of those women and they're now lawyers. So it's been like years long of mentorship to see these women, achieve these incredible opportunities with judges and all of these incredible people that I've made friendships along the way that are like, sure, I'll help you, I'll hire her, I'll give her a summer job. So that's sort of where it started with the mentorship. And it makes me very happy. It makes me very happy to see women's especially succeed in law because I feel like there's so little of us that if we don't help each other, it's just becomes very sad.
Mm, mm, mm. You're not gatekeeping. You're basically
No.
saying, look, If
No, you have to live and you let live.
yeah,
That's it.
it's important that once you reach a certain level in your life, if you realize that there's not a lot of you in the
Yeah.
room, be the difference.
It
Find a
doesn't
way to
take away
get
and yeah, and it
yeah.
doesn't take anything away from me. It's like it's seeing other people succeed. Like that makes me happy. Like the way I describe it is like when people that are runners, they love running and they do marathons and then they describe having like a runner's high, that like euphoric feeling when you're running, which I personally have never experienced before because I hate running. But that feeling of just being happy, that's how I feel when I help people. It just gives me this like awesome feeling inside, like I'm making a difference in someone's life. And it just, it's just, and I just keep doing it because it just, yeah, I feel great.
Yeah, it's priceless.
Yeah.
It truly is. Like you said, that the individuals that you've been mentoring over the past couple of years are now, some of them are lawyers now,
Yeah.
right? To know the amount of work you put in, right, and not have a mentor in front of you, to then having someone that you mentor become a lawyer, you're like, wow, like I actually got some good advice. It actually worked.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, hold up, I feel kind of good. Let me brush my shoulders off. That is amazing. So, talk to me a little bit more now. I want to kind of transition from your mentorship and helping out individuals, this whole law thing. Let's really talk about this book. How are we transitioning from law to being an author of a book? And how did this come about? Did you just wake up one day and say, "Look, let me just write a book"? Like, what happened? Did your father convince you to?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
I was making sure he wasn't selling on that one
No,
too.
no. So, going back to my childhood, I always loved writing, right? And I would enter these little contests. And it wasn't really until I actually was 5 months postpartum that I really decided when I was in therapy for, after giving birth, to go through all of these feelings that I was feeling at the same time because I had gone
Yeah,
through an infertility journey. So I was sad, but I was also happy because I was a mom. So my therapist said, why don't you write down your feelings? Why don't we try to like analyze them? Because I had told her that I liked writing in the past. So she's like, why don't you write them down? Why don't you just start like meditating a little bit with all of that you're feeling? And through my writing at that time, a story started to form. And I had a dream of one of the characters in my book. And a lot of authors will say this, that they dreamt their characters and that their characters just kind of popped in one day. And that's sort of what happened to me with one of my characters. And the story just started forming, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I think I have something, and I have this crazy idea that maybe I'm going to publish it.
okay.
So, I went on like a year-long journey of trying to find an editor and trying to find like a cover artist and all of these things, and everything just sort of came together. And I think when things come together so easily and so seamlessly, they're meant to be. I'm not one of those people that forces situations to happen. I'm just like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yeah,
If I
exactly.
work, if I put the effort in and it comes
You'll be
by
rewarded.
easily, then we're gonna go for it. So that's sort of how it came about, and I published it, and it's been such an incredible journey to see this book like live and be out there and be so
All
well.
around and
Yeah.
where could people find the book? Give them a title of the book, where they could find it, how they could purchase it, how they could
Yeah.
support it.
So the book is called A God of Moonlight and Stardust. And you can find it on Kindle Unlimited, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble. If you're across the pond, you can find it at Waterstones, at Foyles. It's sold in Italy. It's sold all over. So, yeah.
Is it sold in Mexico City now?
Yes,
Let's go.
it is. It is. And actually, a bookstore in Mexico City carries my book. And it's been it's been so like crazy to see um
Wow.
people in
Wow.
Mexico buying my book. It's like,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. That you I, girl, that that right there just warmed my heart, right?
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Let me ask the real question. Let me dive a little deeper. You
Oh, it's surreal. It's
know,
surreal. The bookstore owner, her name is Adriana, and she's just been so amazing. She believes in my story so much. She's like, I'm going to carry a book in my bookstore. I'm like, okay. So, yeah.
Wow, wow. Because it's good to be on Amazon. I'm
Yeah,
not taking away
yeah,
from that. But
yeah.
let's go back to the roots.
Yes.
Let's go back where you started to read, write,
Mhm.
become an advocate. Like, let's go back there and let's see if we could get that book there. And if not, bring it to a school,
Right.
and give a couple of donations to a school out there
Yep.
that they could have and read, during
Mhm.
their library hours or something. But I think that it's amazing when you could leave from your country and find a way to still be connected
Mhm.
many years later,
Yeah.
and in a very positive way. Not just because you want to go back for vacation.
Right.
You're like, no, my book is being sold over there.
Yeah.
Let's you could do a book signing in Mexico
Oh, yeah.
City.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, so are you telling me you did it already?
No, I'm
Oh,
planning on it. I'm
oh,
planning on I'm
okay.
planning on it, so yeah.
So go vacation and still work. Look at that.
Yeah.
And your child gets to witness this.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is
she looks at my
beautiful.
books, and because now I have the second one coming out in June, and she sees the covers and she's like, "Mama book," and "Mama book," and she knows that those are my books, and I get like really emotional hearing her say that because she's seeing a strong woman sort of, like go through life and succeeding, and that's what I want for her. That's everything.
Wow. You are such a great mother.
Thank you.
You're great. And you're a great leader. So transitioning to being a mom. So this is a question that since we're on the topic now, how are you juggling all of this and still being able to contribute to the success of your child?
So it's truly a village. That's what people say. And I think as immigrants, taking it back to the idea that family is so important to us, my family helps me raise my child. And that's the truth. They're hands-on and they care for her. And they allow me to live out my dream, and my husband as well. He allows me the opportunity to write every night. From 9 o'clock p.m. he takes over and he does what needs to get done around the house so that I can sit down and write. So and he takes care of everything with her in the evening time. So it's very much a family sort of enterprise that we're all sort of like little ants, trying to do our part so that I can live out this dream. And it's so cool to see.
Mm, mm. And wow. Does your novel is about a woman, right?
Yes.
And I want to kind of talk about that because we're talking about your daughter, we're talking about you, we're talking about family, but your novel is about a woman embracing her power and
Yeah.
truth in a very challenging world. Do you see a lot of parallels within the story, within your life, and the main character?
Yeah, so the daughter, the woman in the story, she's a daughter of a villainous god, who lives and she lives in a post-apocalyptic world where magic is banned, and she has magic from her father. And she has university attacks that happen on her campus, and she needs to figure out, like, do I embrace my legacy? Do I reclaim my power and sort of fight back on these forces? Or do I just try to blend in and try to be normal like everybody else that has no powers? And I think I identify with her story because, I've been an advocate my whole life. I've stood up for people, especially doing, pro bono immigration work, and doing, what I can to sort of help other people, and through the powers that I have from either, legal or anything that, allows me to speak up. So I identify with her very much. Um, reclaiming her voice and who she is, especially after writing the book when I was postpartum and trying to find that voice, that I was struggling so much to use.
Hmm, hmm. And what do you want the readers to take away from the book?
So the book deals a lot with not only, staying true to who you are, but also with grief, and with mental health. So the book deals a lot uh, one of the dynamics in the story is it has romance. It's romance is not the whole plot, but it has romance as like a regular part of the story. Um, and it deals a lot with loss in terms of like a death that happens in the book. And I want people to know that grief isn't linear, that sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days, sometimes you're okay, and sometimes you're not. And I think the most important things that we can do for ourselves as we're going through these very heavy emotions is to seek mental help and to go to therapy. I think therapy is so instrumental to making us our best selves. And it's so accessible now because you have like therapists that text, through the apps and
Yeah.
all of these things. So therapy, you can even do telehealth. You don't even have to go into an office anymore. So there's just so many opportunities to seek help and to find a way to be at peace in your own heart. And I hope that that's something that they take away from the story.
I'm glad you're really diving in and kind of mentioning the various different options when it comes to therapists and just asking for help. That is probably sometimes the hardest thing. A lot of the thought leaders that have come on with the platform had spoken about, like spoken out about as well, about coming here to America and having a hard time finding that or finding it was acceptable to do those things. And
Right.
you openly just said, hey, look, I go to my therapist, this, that, they told me this and this, and you said that this is you even gave options on where you could find those things. uh our immigrant parents and grandparents probably just they didn't have access to it, right? Sad to say, right? It wasn't thought of, so it was always like, just keep your head down and keep working hard, when in actuality going to someone who specializes in helping you navigate a little bit more, even social workers, whatever it was, you know it's a tool, it's a resource, right? Versus just work hard, work hard, work hard. And as you can see, shingles in school, right?
Right.
All these things, people start to realize, oh, I don't feel healthy as much right now. I feel a little sick. Stress does craziness to the body, right? And it can really cause some serious damages. But if you're able to kind of find outlets, such as writing, which I'm glad that you're saying you found an outlet and you kept on writing, and then also finding other outlets such as therapists or people to kind of help you advocate for yourself. That is really some of the best ways of doing it versus
Yeah.
keeping it in and having that pressure that's already on you already.
I would also remind people that a lot of the times when we're feeling very stressed and we're feeling kind of hopeless, that we try to assert control because that's something that helps us feel safe. And I would like to remind people that you seeking help, you seeking mental health support, is you also taking control.
Mm,
That is you
mm-hmm,
actively taking control. So it's not like someone is guiding you through therapy, and you're sort of a passenger. It's you actively taking control and saying, you know what? This ends today in terms of me feeling like this, and I'm going to do something about it to help me feel better and help me get better. That's actively taking control. And that's so important to sort of help people reframe that in their minds, that you're not a failure for seeking help. So.
mm, mm. What great way of saying that. Um, One of my last questions to you right now is, many immigrants struggle with balancing their heritage and their identity and how to build a career in the United States. How could you help provide some type of guidance when balancing that? Because it seems that you definitely have your a way of doing it.
I would say, try to observe, holidays from your motherland. That's something that's so easy to do, even if you don't feel as close to them, like for example, Hispanic Heritage Month or Black History Month, you know, during those months, you may not celebrate Cinco de Mayo, which is fine if you're Hispanic, but maybe you want to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month and dedicating that month to either reading about, Hispanic authors or picking up a book about, the history of a country or watching a documentary, something that really connects you with where you came from and where your roots are. And also making sure that you um, Try to also provide small business support to people that look like you and people with similar stories like you, and putting your dollars in their small businesses. I think that also helps a lot, um, to sort of add to your experience in this country, because we don't have a lot of minority businesses or businesses owned by immigrants. It's not that many. So when you are actively contributing to other immigrants, it not only, elevates your own experience, but it also helps you to feel a little closer to your roots.
Mm, mm, mm. Well said. Well said. Um, I just want to say again, thank you for taking the time out to just be present with us on this platform, sharing your story, the good, the bad. I feel like a lot of times people will see your accolades, they'll look at your degrees, they'll see all the wonderful things that people have done, but not truly understand what it took to get there
Yeah.
and what it takes to still be there. Because it doesn't mean once you get there, you've made it, right? There's still a lot to do. And because you are a mom now and you want to kind of also, you have a different type of lifestyle you need to live and uphold. So whether it was being the older sister, now you then have to transition that to being a mom and being a leader and also all those people that you mentor as well. So
Yeah.
it's like the job is never done, right?
The job is never done, but you pick something that you love, and then you put all your love into it.
Come
And
on.
I think that's what it can seem like a chore, but what, like you said, which you were so right, when you love something, it really just becomes a part of who you are. So yeah.
Mina, thank you so much for just being present again. Your story is amazing. Congratulations on the book. The second one is coming out. Please let the listeners know when the second one's coming out again.
So the second one is coming out June 30th, 2025, and it's called An Air of Darkness and Ruin, which is the sequel to A God of Moonlight and Stardust.
Ooh, okay. Come on. We got that
Fantasy,
sequel.
fantasy and sci-fi. So if you like Star Wars and you like, all of these like cool sci-fi things, you're definitely gonna want it to read it.
Okay. Well, listeners, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Mina, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.